Hi there, and welcome back to the British Accent Podcast. I'm Emily.
And I'm Nick. Today, we're diving into something that's quite personal, something many English learners experience without always being able to explain it. That strange, powerful feeling of discovering that you can say things in English that you never quite dared to say in your own language.
Yes, and it's fascinating when that happens, isn't it? You start learning English thinking it's just a skill, something practical, and then one day, you realize you've just said something in English, maybe about how you feel, or what you believe, that you've never said aloud in your first language.
And it can be something small, like, I'm tired, or I need space. Or something deeper, like, I'm not okay, or this matters to me. And you realize it's not just about words. It's about permission. You somehow gave yourself permission to say it, in English, when you hadn't before.
It's like English creates a little bit of distance between you and your fears. You don't feel the same pressure to get everything exactly right, or to speak with the weight of history. And because of that, you speak with a different kind of freedom.
Exactly. In your native language, you might feel watched, by culture, by family, by expectations. But in English, you're new. You're learning. You don't have to carry all that. So when you speak, you often end up being more honest.
That honesty can be surprising, and sometimes even emotional. Because you realize, I've had these feelings for so long, why couldn't I say them before? And the answer might be that your first language was tied too closely to who you were expected to be.
And English becomes a kind of doorway, not just to another culture, but to another version of you. One who's a bit braver, a bit more curious, a bit more willing to speak from the heart.
And that version of you doesn't feel trapped by all the usual rules, the ones you never even realized were there. The rules about what's polite to say, what's too direct, what should stay quiet. In English, those rules don't feel quite as heavy.
Yeah. Sometimes people say, I feel like I can express my emotions better in English, and it's not because their English is perfect, it's because it feels safer. It gives you a little bit of space from your old habits, your cultural expectations, your inner critic.
And it's not that you don't love your native language. You do. It holds your childhood, your memories, your deepest roots. But sometimes, it also holds your silence. The things you were taught not to say. The parts of yourself that were never given room to breathe.
And learning English becomes more than just vocabulary and grammar. It becomes emotional work. You start to notice how your voice changes. How your thoughts feel lighter. How you start saying things out loud, and realizing you've never said them before in any language.
Things like, I'm proud of myself. Or I want something different. Or even no, those small, but powerful sentences that maybe felt too risky, too bold, too unfamiliar in your first language. But in English, they start to feel possible.
And that's where growth happens. Not just in the words you're learning, but in the truths you're finally allowing yourself to say. The things you've carried for so long, that start to feel lighter once you give them a voice.
And sometimes you'll surprise yourself. You'll say something in English and then pause and think, wait, did I just admit that? And maybe for the first time, it doesn't feel scary. It feels freeing. Like exhaling after holding your breath for too long.
And what's really beautiful is that once you've said it in English, whatever it is, it starts to feel sayable. Period. You've cracked something open. You've made it real. And slowly, that courage starts spilling over into your other languages, into your everyday life.
Exactly. Because speaking it, even just once, even in a different language, proves to you that it can be said. That your feelings are allowed. That your thoughts deserve space. That your voice matters.
And this is why language learning is so deeply personal. It's not just about achieving fluency. It's about reclaiming something. A part of yourself you didn't know was hidden. Or maybe one you were taught to keep quiet.
And English becomes your way of exploring that part. Testing it out. Saying things slowly, gently, until they start to feel like they belong. Like they've been waiting for this voice all along.
And you don't always realize it at first. Sometimes, you look back and think, learning English didn't just help me speak to other people. It helped me speak to myself.
Yes. To hear yourself more clearly. To understand what you truly think, not what you're supposed to say, not what sounds acceptable, but what's actually true for you.
And maybe you couldn't reach that truth in your first language. Not because the words didn't exist, but because the version of you who uses those words wasn't ready yet. And English gave that version room to grow.
It's not about choosing one language over the other. It's about honoring the role each one plays. Your native language raised you. But maybe English is helping you meet yourself.
And that meeting, that quiet recognition, can feel so personal. Because it's not something anyone else sees, necessarily. It happens in those small moments, when you journal in English and say something honest, when you message someone and dare to be a bit more vulnerable than usual.
Or when you finally say something out loud, something that's lived inside you for years, and you realize you needed English to unlock it. Not because your native language lacked the words, but because it carried too much weight.
That's the thing, isn't it? Our first languages are often wrapped up in identity, family, culture, expectations. English, for many learners, starts as a tool. But over time, it becomes a quiet space that feels less judged. More neutral. More open.
And because it feels open, you take emotional risks. You try saying things you wouldn't usually say. And the language itself, even if imperfect, holds you through it. It doesn't push back with shame or history. It just lets you speak.
And when that happens, you realize, maybe it's not really about the language. Maybe it's about what the language unlocks. Maybe it's about being brave enough to find a voice that feels more true than the one you've always used.
And I think that's something to hold on to. Because it means your growth isn't limited to English. The clarity, the courage, the honesty, all of that can travel with you, into your other languages, into your relationships, into how you see yourself.
So even if you're still learning, even if your English feels slow or awkward or clumsy some days, if it's helping you say something you've never said before, it's already doing something extraordinary.
Because what really matters isn't how smooth your sentence sounds, it's what you were brave enough to express. That sentence might be simple, but the act of speaking it is anything but. It takes courage to name something real.
And maybe that's one of the hidden gifts of learning English. It slows you down enough to notice what you're saying. You don't rush past your feelings, you sit with them, choose your words, and speak them with intention.
And because you're choosing your words more carefully, there's often more clarity. Sometimes when you speak your native language, you speak from habit. But in English, you have to mean what you say. You have to reach for it.
Which is why English can become a kind of emotional mirror. Not just a way to communicate, but a way to reflect. To uncover what you feel. To untangle what's been quiet for a long time.
And maybe the reason you couldn't say those things before wasn't that you didn't know how. It's that you didn't yet feel safe to try. English gave you a bit of space. And in that space, your voice found its way through.
It's such a powerful reminder that language isn't just about information, it's about connection. And sometimes the person you connect with most is yourself.
Yes. And once you've felt that, even just once, you can't unfeel it. You start to realize, the more I speak, the more I understand myself. And the more I understand myself, the more freely I can speak.
And in that loop, between learning and feeling and expressing, something changes. You're not just becoming fluent in English. You're becoming fluent in yourself.
And that kind of fluency isn't about grammar rules or vocabulary size. It's about learning to say what you mean, even if it takes time, even if the sentence isn't perfect, even if your voice shakes a little when you say it.
Because sometimes, the most powerful things we say aren't said smoothly. They come out slowly. Carefully. With pauses. And those pauses aren't weaknesses, they are signs that you're telling the truth.
And maybe that's what English helped you find, not just the right words, but the right space to say them. A space that feels separate from everything that used to silence you. A space where you're allowed to be new, and honest, and unsure.
That's such a rare thing. To find a language that doesn't just challenge you, but also welcomes you. That gives you room to make mistakes and still be understood. Room to feel lost and still belong.
And slowly, as you build that trust, not just in the language, but in yourself, you begin to speak in ways that feel more real than ever before. Not just in English, but everywhere.
Because once you've spoken a truth in any language, you carry it with you. It becomes part of who you are. And no one can take that away, not an accent, not a hesitation, not even a forgotten word.
And that's the beauty of it. You started learning English because you wanted to communicate. But along the way, you discovered your own voice, and what it's capable of saying, when finally given the chance.
So if you've ever found yourself saying things in English that you couldn't say in your native language, that's not strange. That's a sign of growth. A sign that your voice is evolving, expanding, and asking to be heard, in ways you might never have expected.
We hope today's conversation helped you feel a little more seen, a little more understood. And maybe, more than anything, a little more connected to that part of you that's still learning how to speak, with courage, with clarity, and with kindness.
Thanks for spending this time with us. We'll be back soon with more reflections from the heart of language learning. Until then, be gentle with your voice, in every language it speaks.
Take care, and speak softly to yourself. You're doing better than you think.